I've been in the darkness for 40 days. I've been searching for holy flames, a sign to light up the way. So can you help me out? Can you help me out?
Welcome back to the dumbest guy in the room. Today, my guest is actually the guy who created the song that you heard play just before this. His name is Trent. I actually found this song through, I think the website was called Artlist that I use. And, I found the song very relatable to my life. That made me look into you a little bit more. I was lucky enough he responded to a comment on YouTube. And I'm going to let Trent kind of just, introduce yourself. You better than anybody else. So go ahead, man. Tell the listeners who you are.
Yeah, sweet. So my name is Trent Thompson. I hail from the great city of Charlotte, North Carolina. Born and raised here in North Carolina, right outside the city. So I'm an artist, a musician. I've been doing that most of my life. I grew up in the church world and was around music. My mom, she can play piano, keys, she sings. She was a part of that like the worship band stuff. If you know anything about the evangelical church world, we have worship teams and all that stuff. So I got involved in music when I was really young and started playing drums first because that was like the coolest. I was like, God, those guys are so cool. I want to do that. And along that journey, realized that I wanted to actually write music and sing, although I didn't know how to do either one of those. And I always thought my voice was trash. But after years of working on it, found myself writing and playing. And a few years, 2013 is when I started a local band here in Charlotte. And we did that for a few years, and I was playing guitar and singing, writing songs. And then a few years later, started a solo project, which is the song you heard at the intro of this podcast and a handful of other songs that are currently out. And that's kind of, one of the dreams is to be a full-time artist, touring, all that stuff. And that's just that side of it. I'm also a dad, which is what comes first, and a husband. I've been married for 10 years now. I have 4 kids, no more. I've made sure that I cannot procreate anymore. And then I'm also a video marketer. So my day job is video marketing. I write, produce, record, edit videos for work. And that's another thing that I love to do is write and produce videos, also act. So I'm a man who has many plates spinning, most of them revolving in the creative world, and with some dreams, alongside of music, acting, and film. So that, in a nutshell, is who I am.
That's awesome, man. I think the some of the most incredible people that I've met are very creative. So you probably watched the beginning of mine and was like, this guy has no idea what he's doing. He could have did this and that. But that was like it's insane when for the first time I did that, like the first time I created an intro for the video, and you see how much goes into it as far as like every little detail. It's literally its own thing.
Yeah.
You don't see that when you watch like your videos, it looks just like somebody has a video camera and you're videotaping it.
Yeah.
And then you get into the editing portion and you're like, wow, like the amount of time, effort, and like creativeness that needs to go into this is absolutely insane.
Yeah. I mean, it's like anything in life. I sat down with a buddy, I think it was a year and a half ago, and he's a great director, producer. Like he's younger than me. I'm about to be 30. But he's been doing this a lot longer. Even he started really young. And I was like, man, you're so talented. And he was like, well, talent is not what you're seeing. You're seeing hard work. Like I put years into this. And so it's just like anything you jump into, whether that's a podcast, whether that's video, whether that's sales, whether that's construction, like it takes work to get to a place where what once seemed like, holy shit, this is really like, what do you do? What buttons do you even push to get started, to all of a sudden jumping in, and in a few minutes you've, created an intro for a video, and it's pretty easy to do, but it takes time and effort.
Yeah, man, I love that, because I definitely do agree with you, and I think it's a good example for the fact of like you said, you have to go on, push some buttons. Well,
Yeah.
if all I want is the video and I don't push the buttons, the video is never going to get made.
Yep.
Right. So making sure that you focus on like the little things each day in order to build something bigger, 10 years down the line, you'll be able to see it, but you're not going to see it right away.
Yeah.
And in your world, dude, it's probably even, longer. You have to wait, and more work you got to put in, because a lot of people want to do that stuff. But most people don't want to put the work in, and it's people that put the work in that do achieve those goals. But you said you're about to turn 30, dude. And you said that your buddy was doing something since he was young.
Yeah.
You created 4 lives, and
yeah,
you're not even 30 years old yet, dude. That's absolutely insane.
Yeah, man. It is wild. And oftentimes I'll tell people I have 4 kids, and they're like, I'm sorry, how old are you? Like, that's a pretty common question I get. And that a lot of that comes from how I was raised in the culture I grew up in, the evangelical church, which I'm no longer a part of. I wouldn't say I'm a Christian anymore. But that was a really big part of my life. I met my wife at church camp when we were in middle school. So we were friends for a long time. And then we started dating in high school. After high school, we wanted to get married pretty quickly. And so we kind of just jump started our lives, and we knew what we wanted. I've always been someone who like has a vision for my future. I know the things that I want. And my wife, I would say, is a very similar person as far as knowing what she wants. And so we were just like, yeah, let's have kids. Her brother is older, and they had their first kid, and we were like a year and a half into marriage, and we're like, man, we kind of want to do that. We want to start that side of things, because we also wanted to be young parents. And then when they grow up and move out of the house, we wanted to be as young as possible so that we could live life with them. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I'm with you, man.
Yeah,
I'm right with you. I just look a lot older, but I have 3 kids and I'm 31. But the kids did a lot more damage to me than they seem to be doing to you.
No, you look great, man. You look great. You got to give yourself more credit.
I look better when my wife's around, dude. She makes me look better.
Bumps you up. Yeah, I would agree with my wife as well.
You keep mentioning the how do you say it? What is it?
Evangelical.
Yeah. Now I've heard of that branch of Christianity.
Yep.
I was raised Catholic, so pretty similar. And I'm 100% agreement with you. I don't really label myself as with anything anymore.
Yeah.
Christianity being kind of one of them. But believe it or not, I'm actually the only I'm the only person that doesn't call himself a Christian in a Bible study that we do here, because I do believe in morals and values and the stories that book has to provide.
Yeah.
It's more or less the some of the teachings and the power that book holds, that people can, in my opinion, use it for. That book's like it's like a hammer. You can either demo something with it, you can destroy it, or you can help build something with it. Yeah. So it really depends on how you use it. So when you're following somebody that's telling you how to use it, in my opinion, dude, I grew up thinking I was always bad. Like I was always a terrible human being, and I had all this. I don't know what it was, dude, but I just kind of definitely grew away from that. Yeah. Now it's crazy you said that, because in your song, how long ago since you walked away from the church? I guess I should say.
That's a great question. I would say 2017, the end of 2017. I believe it was October, whenever I was working at my dad's church. I was working with my dad, who's a pastor to this day. And wow. That was when I decided to leave the church. And then as I was doing that, I wasn't very vocal about the fact that I was also leaving like my faith and not believing this anymore. It took some time before I started telling that to other people other than my wife. My wife was in on the conversations, but it took like probably another year before I was outwardly saying, yeah, I actually don't believe that anymore. Just because it was pretty jolting to, I think, my entire family and friends.
It's not even that bad. I think it's anything that I think we all grow up with an ideology, no matter what it is. We all have this like this rock, this foundation that we're kind of somebody else built on us. And if we don't end up letting it go at some point, it's just going to control us. That's my thought on that. But I commend you, dude, because like your dad's still a pastor at the church. So your parents grew up like that. And obviously I'm sure they were more more in tune with the religious beliefs than my parents were. My parents were like, maybe go on a holiday. Like I just went to Catholic church. We just said that we were Catholic. Just went to Catholic school. So now I'm Catholic. But with your parents in the positions that they're in, how did they take it? Like, do you still talk with them? Are they okay with it? Like,
yeah. So, my dad and I's relationship has always been a bit interesting. And, I think the older I get, the more work that I do on myself, and processing childhood and things like that. The guy, like, I give plenty of grace to the guy. His dad was pretty absent in his life. It was around, but he was an alcoholic and then had a stroke. And then my dad ended up taking care of his dad until he passed away a handful of years ago. And his mom died when she was like in her 30s, I think. He was very young. He was in, I think 19 when she died. And so he's never been like super close to either myself or my sisters. And when this all happened, there was a lot of pain, a lot of hurt. We did not talk for quite some time. Now I would say we have a good relationship as far as we try to hang out with each other occasionally and things like that. But he's actually never asked me about it. He's never talked to me about it. He knows I've put it out there on Facebook, on YouTube, clearly, that I'm not a Christian and the reasons that I don't believe that. But he's never, ever asked me about it. My mom, on the other hand, we've been closer. My entire life I've been a bit closer to my mom. They're divorced as well. So they got divorced when I was in 7th grade, and that was a mess in the Christian world too. But
let's see that.
Yeah. But I've talked to her about it, and I would say she's definitely, from where she was when I was a kid, as involved in the church. She's not as involved. She doesn't hold it all as heavily and serious as she used to, but she still does believe. And I think I'll just say some stuff and she'll just kind of, okay, just shake her head a little bit, but she's pretty cool about it other than that.
I commend that too, because I feel like a lot of times when we do walk away from the ideology that our parents hold, it could be damaging to the family, which is another reason why people kind of sometimes hold on to that stuff.
Yep.
But the reason I kind of, like I said, when I heard that song, I heard Dirty Water, I think it's called. And your songs had a lot of pain. So it's crazy because when I was looking for a song, I was looking for something that had inspiration out of pain, which is how I came across on my own. And I heard all that, but I also was like, when you write music, you have your perspective, right? And then when people listen to it, we listen to it, and then we create our image based off our experiences using those words. So like everybody that listens to that song is going to see something completely different, which is what's amazing about music.
Yep.
But when I was listening to it, I was like, I didn't want to get into any videos of you talking. I just wanted to, have that for my own. And then I couldn't tell. I was like, this is very kind of morally and values aligned with Christianity.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem like that's where it's also sounds like it's him breaking away from the thing that it sounds just like. So tell me, like, was that song from a place of pain? Was it what was that song kind of based on, and how'd you create it?
Yeah. Which one? On My Own or Dirty Water?
Both of them, man. I think they're both pretty amazing songs. Great lyrics. And I think, go. All yours, man.
Thank you for that. That's very kind. They were I think you are pretty on the nail with this. They were written out of pain. I have, I think, 6 songs out right now publicly, like on any streaming services, and I write really really well out of pain. I think a lot of artists do. Like there are plenty of people who write songs that are happy and fun, and I think I have some of those. But most of the time, if I write a song and I'm like, damn, this is good, it's like out of something that I was like, oh fuck, like this hurt or whatever. Um, so yeah, Dirty Water and On My Own. When I wrote those songs, it was as I just left the church. It was as I was just leaving the faith. So there were still so many ties, and I think the language that I used was still that of being a Christian, growing up in this world. But yeah, I mean, really, those songs, Dirty Water is specifically started out about someone I knew who was verbally abusive to his family, who was a Christian man, and was involved in the church, and I'd found some stuff out. So that song started with that idea, and then really turned into something bigger as these, I think, that as it often happens, and to more of a broader look at so many things that I experienced in Christianity, which was essentially hypocrisy and people hurting other people while one of the lyrics is the blind man screams, I've got the cure that can fix your eyes and got the keys to the free life. It's like this, the blind guy who's saying, I can teach you how to see, and he's like, he can't even see himself. So like that song, it was really about the hypocrisy of a lot of the things I experienced in religion. And then the flip side, On My Own, was kind of the last, like, I would say, song written about this season, where it was basically, I'm leaving something I believed in my whole life. The foundation of my values and principles are now gone. I have to rebuild that. And it was the wrestle between, is this all bullshit, or is there some that I can still use? Am I completely on my own here, or is there something out there that exists that is a God, or is spirit, or the universe, whatever title you want to put on it? But is there something bigger that is still within each one of us and connecting us that I can hold on to, or am I just on my own? And I think growing up, I've always been in touch with my emotions, relatively so. And again, a visionary, someone who looks into sees a vision for my future. And like, there's that voice, the end of the song, I think I can hear you say, dream big, because we're going to make it. Stand tall, there's a higher road you're taking. That whole line is the idea of whether that's me or that's something else out there, there is something that resounds in me to keep going, to keep dreaming, to keep believing in something, in us, and whatever. I don't have to label it. I don't have to know. I don't have to sell it to the person next to me and say, hey, you got to believe this or else this. For myself, I'm just going to keep on dreaming big, and I'm going to keep on loving,
That is amazing. And I'm with you. So whatever that thing is that does connect and that's within all of us has us here right now today doing this podcast, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I'm right there with you. Now, I guess let's go back just a little bit with the leaving the church. What happened? Like, what was the thing that was like, man, this is not right, because one of my biggest inspirations is, and I actually named my son after him, is Malcolm X. Malcolm X's story is untold, really. But that's a story about a guy who grew up. Dad was, killed by KKK. Grew up, on that, hating, not wanting to, wanted to separate, didn't want whites, blacks together, to seeing the hypocrisy in the guy that he trusted the most. So the guy that he was following was spreading all this stuff, but then he found out he was sleeping with young girls when he was married, underage girls, and said, something's not right here. How are you preaching this stuff, but not doing the same things that you're speaking? Went to Mecca, did his thing, came back, And at that point is when he started to share everything that was going on. It was like, this, what's happening is not right. And now, unfortunately, Malcolm X is, no longer here for doing that. But same, like something, what happened with you that said, hey, Trent, this isn't right, man. Something's not right. I don't feel right.
Yeah. Yeah, there were moments for sure. And, going back to my childhood and growing up in this, there were things that didn't always resonate with me. In the evangelical, like the idea of God being like your dad is pushed a lot. Abba Father means like daddy, like, so this idea of like a dad, God is essentially your father. He is a father figure. And so like ideas like hell never sat well. Even when I was a kid, I was like, I just don't get how this can be real. Like, how can, if you don't get this right, our lives are finite. They're so small too. Like the amount of time that we get on earth is just microscopic compared to how long it's been, like Earth has been around, and how long, like the evolution of man, like all these things. And then you have to factor in where you're born and who your parents are and what you ate yesterday to because what you ate affects how your brain is going to find, like all these things will determine at the end of the day what you believe. And all those things, so many of them out of our control, determine where you end up. And a lot of people are going to burn in hell for those things. As a kid, I wasn't able to compute that math, but I just knew internally, like, this doesn't feel like a loving father. Like, I always had a dream of being a dad when I was a young kid. One of my dreams accomplished, nailed it. But I wanted to be a good dad, and I would see, good dads portrayed on TV or movies. And I was like, I don't buy it. Like, God's just not tossing people in a lake of fire, which is what I was told. So that always sat with me. I think as I got older, I definitely watched hypocrisy like all the time. In the evangelical, people would say one thing and then they would act completely different. But as I started working in the church, and this is week after week, Sunday after Sunday, I'm leading worship. So I'm singing songs, I'm playing music. There's altar calls, meaning people are coming down to the front to be prayed for because they want something in their life to change. I think after a while, it was just like, this is the same people. They keep coming down and nothing's changing. Why is nothing changing? Why do they keep, if this is so good, if God is so real and he's so powerful and he's going to change your life, he's going to wipe this away, then why is nothing changing? Why do these people keep doing the same? Like, I felt like it was a moment of stepping back and being like, oh, I'm just in Groundhog's Day. Like, everything is the same thing over and over again. I think from there, I started just kind of analyzing, why did I actually believe what I believe? Where did this come from? What's the source? And we say it's you got to believe the Bible. Where did that come from? And this was changed and edited. And how did they get these stories? Well, they waited, a long time before they recounted these stories by word of mouth, just pass it down. So all these little things started popping up. And then that's when I think there was a Sunday morning where I was just like, I can't do this anymore. Like, this is a broken cycle. This is hypocrisy. Like, I'm hearing stories of people asking for help or needing these things. And the people who are saying that they'll help are just being like mean and unhelpful. So that was kind of it. And you mentioned this earlier, saying that you always, when you were younger and growing up in the Catholic faith, like, you always felt bad, like something was wrong. This was a huge thing coming out of Christianity and being able to analyze all the things, like, for once, questioning, because when you're raised in it, just like a cult,
Don't question.
Don't question it. Yeah, you can't. No, don't question, because if you start to question it, that's the enemy. That's the devil. He's tempting you. So it's like it's a lose-lose for the individual, right? Whoever's the pastor speaking into the congregation, they have the power. The congregation, if you start to question, you don't have the power. So you like, don't do that. It's the devil. It's the devil. It's the devil. It's just like the Salem witch trials. It's like, well, they're a witch because they're not doing what we want them to do.
Yeah, but they were crazy. They were crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
That group's nuts.
Yes. So
sorry.
No, I mean, yeah, you're right. That's it. But this feeling of being bad and being wrong, I think as I started unpacking my faith and deconstructing is like the trigger word in the evangelical deconstructing. Um, I realized that one of the things that has held me down most of my life is the belief that I'm a sinner and that I'm not good enough, and that the only way I can be whole and right is if I accept Jesus in my heart. When I started to understand that, for me, that's not true. For me, I believe that is a complete lie. And then that happened. Okay, I know I'm talking and kind of going on, but I'll say
Yeah, you're
another
good, man. Keep going. It
another
makes sense to me. Trust me.
okay, another significant moment with what I was just talking about, that feeling of I was born bad. That's what I'm told in the evangelical world is you're born into sin. You're born a sinner. So the only way that you can be whole and clean is if you accept the blood of Jesus. He died for you. He sacrificed his life. So you have to accept that, accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior, and then boom, you're clean. You're forgiven. You're whole. You can go to heaven when you die. I held my baby girl, my oldest daughter, for the first time, right? As she came into this world, and I looked at that baby and I'm like, how can this be a sinful person? It doesn't make sense. And I've heard sermons all my life where you want to know how you can tell that we're born sinners. We'll just ask a kid, like, just listen to kids. Their favorite words are mine and give me that. And, little kids are so selfish. We were like, you grow up as an adult and you have kids and you start to realize they're not fucking selfish. Their brains are learning how to survive. That's all they know is this is mine, right? Like I've not learned how to say, hey, can I actually have that back now? I was playing with that. All they know is this was once in my hands. So now I know that to be mine. It's just all these things that we're just fed and told. So the idea of being born a sinner, being born wrong, once I started to believe that that wasn't true, dude, I cannot tell you how much joy I found in my life. And the shit that I would always feel guilty about or deal with, or like, there was a fog over, like a fog of sadness or shame, that was gone, because all of a sudden I'm like, wait a minute, I'm actually a beautiful, wonderful person. Like I was born amazing, and so are you, and so is that guy over there, and that dude who thinks he's a piece of shit, he's also amazing, and that girl who thinks she's not beautiful, she is absolutely beautiful. Like this, it just changed everything for me. So that was the journey. A little messy, I'm sorry for my storyline, but those are the significant moments that made me start questioning everything. And then that moment in church one morning when I was like, this is a cycle and I just can't do it anymore. That was like the breaking point.
Yeah, I don't think you were all over the place. I think it was a loaded question. I think that, when we look back, then we can start to see everything.
Yeah.
But so that question, even though it sounds sometimes, or some people can give an easy answer, like this happened. It's like, well, in my opinion, when you give that answer, it's either you don't feel like going that deep, or you haven't really connected all of the dots yet.
Yeah.
You're not really dug it down into yourself to figure out, how did I get here?
Yeah.
Like what? And oh man, look at all this. Remember that? And it still happens to me, like sometimes, and not with Christianity, because I really always fought with it, because I was always like, this bad thing happened. Why is there God? But I was a great believer when something bad would happen, or I'd blame God. But when something good happened, I was not a believer anymore. But it was so much easier to blame the bad stuff on whatever that God thing is that we all talk about.
Yeah.
But that is awesome. Do you think that, because you said originally what you started to do is ask these questions, right? So you started to ask these questions. Now, for me, when I look back at my life, these questions were always there. The problem was I had no one to ask them to. So I was never open enough to be, or brave enough, or have enough courage to be open to ask those things. I didn't have anybody to do that. My family was more like, get up and keep and do what you have to do.
Yeah.
And I am an alcoholic. I've been sober for 6 years.
Oh, amazing.
I haven't drank, and that's kind of where my journey started, was through sobriety, but it was all because of my wife. So my wife was the one that allowed me to be able to open those doors up and start asking her those questions and her digging a little deeper into those questions and me having to dig deeper. And it was a lot of pain, a lot of fights, a lot of anger. Because my first reaction with stuff like that is to avoid it. So my avoidance was to act out emotionally and, not allow myself to control my emotions in the situation. It was always get out of here, escape, don't do this. It's like save yourself right now. Now that's what you're doing. You're saving yourself right now, but you're not helping yourself later. Did you have is those questions? So were you answering them on your own, in your head? Were you writing it down? Like, what was your method of answering those questions or getting answers to those?
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty lucky to be, or to have started this journey in the age that we live in, where there is a lot more accessibility to other people and their opinions and their views online on the internet. Obviously that can be dangerous. You could find yourself in a cult really quick if you're not careful. On YouTube, you get down a dark hole. But no, I started listening to a podcast of guys who were Christians. And they were part of the journey too, because I was listening to them. They started deconstructing before I did. They started questioning the faith before I did. And their whole podcast, they started it as a way they were going to read through the entire Bible and essentially go through different parts of the Bible. One of them was a Christian scientist guy, is super smart. The other guy is a pretty popular Christian artist. So they started to deconstruct on the podcast. They started to be actually, we don't believe this anymore. We read the entire Bible and we are now none of this makes sense. So I kind of stopped listening to them because I was I can't, I can't have that influence on my life, or I might doubt my faith. So once I actually started questioning, I went back to that podcast and started listening to some of those resources. There was a pastor who, when I was in middle school, he was a pretty popular pastor. He did these video series called Numa, where he would talk about God, and he was just such a good storyteller. And he wrote a book years ago called Love Wins. The premise of this book is essentially that hell does not exist and everyone goes to heaven. He was fired from his church. He was outcasted. His name is Rob Bell. He's an author and he has a podcast. I've never met the guy, but he's such a lovely person, man. He's just full of love and light. So his name became very taboo in the Christian world, but I knew about that book. So I went and downloaded the audio version of that book and listened to that. He had another book that came out along the same time I was deconstructing, called What is the Bible?, where he essentially talked about the context of the Bible, when it was written, what books. I mean, it's not boring history stuff. He's a great storyteller. So he gives context to so many things. And then Richard Rohr, Father Richard Rohr, is a Franciscan monk. I don't know if he's a monk. He's not a monk. He's a he's something. He's a Christian, but he's this old guy. He wrote a book called Falling Upwards. He has a handful of books, but Falling Upward was another book that I read that was essentially based on the idea that your faith, if it doesn't mature, if it doesn't stay, or if it doesn't ever grow and change, then really you're just stagnant. And that's not what faith was ever meant to be. And so he kind of gave me permission, as someone who would still call himself a Christian, a Christ follower. He gave me permission to lean into that and to say, okay, this is okay, that I'm spiritually awakening to other things. And it doesn't look like what I've always been told. And it's called Falling Upward because essentially you're falling, but you're falling up. You're not falling back or down. And this is a necessary thing to do in life. And he talks about how the American spirituality is so stuck and so stagnant and so stale. And we're told to never grow and to never change and to never evolve. And he's like, that was never the purpose of this. So those names, Rob Bell and Richard Rohr, those were two fundamental people that I looked to and started reading because they had both been through the same things that I was going through.
It's crazy you kind of say that, because sometimes, like you said, it started out with this other podcast that you're listening to, they left. You're like, oh, can't do that. And how sometimes the things that we're taking in the present make absolutely no sense to us, or we want nothing to do with it, make total sense even 5 years from now. So like
Yeah.
always try to take that into consideration when I'm doing something. It's like, this could be like, everything has meaning. Like some things that you don't think do, or you think are insane, or whatever it may be, start making sense years later. There's a reason why you're getting this information right now. It's just you're not ready for it.
I 100% agree with that. And I I preach that too, of just like, you don't know when this will be useful, but at some point in your life, it will 90% be used in some way. And you'll go, holy shit, I can't believe I'm doing this, because 10 years ago, I did this thing where I learned this, or I was around this. And now it's like full circle. That's so much of my story. Like right now, the things that I do for work and the things that I'm aspiring to do, it's like, this was some of the stuff that I was doing when I was younger, and I never thought I'd be doing it today,
Yeah. And
Wild.
I think that's the big step is the being self-aware, self-conscious of those things, and knowing where and like who taught it, how it, like knowing the words that, like when I speak, a lot of times, if I have some type of philosophical view or whatever it may be, I typically know exactly where I got it. Right. Like, but before I got down this journey, I thought I created it all. It was all me. I did it. Nobody taught me this. I did it. Where now it's more like, no, I know kind of where these things are coming from. I know, and some of it's convoluted, like, between different people, but for the most part, it's like, I know where I got this information. I know where I learned this, and things start to make more sense as it moves forward. Now with your with your faith, or what do you have now? Do you have a belief system? Do you totally disregard the Bible? Do you, like, where's your stance on that
Yeah.
that stuff?
Yeah. I would say, I definitely don't believe in like a specific religion, right? Like I wouldn't claim anything. I think it's, yeah, some days I'm like, yeah, there's something, other days I'm like, I don't know how there could be something. And I think I fluctuate right now in life with that. I hold everything pretty loosely, and I don't assume that I know. I think a big thing is values to me. Value of love, and kindness, are two of the biggest ones in our house that we are trying to instill in our kids. And the value of love in general means love for others and self-love, making sure you love and know yourself as well. So because so the Bible, even going back to that, there's a verse that says, love your neighbor like you love yourself. Or love your neighbor as yourself. And that's, something that I think is still a wise thing, because if you can't love yourself, if you don't know how to love yourself, you'll never be able to love your neighbor. So it does start with you. But I look at the Bible now as a tool, like you were saying, the hammer thing, right? Is a tool that can be used and is helpful for some people. For me, it isn't. I grew up with it. It's like, it's got too much baggage, and there's not enough of it that makes sense, in my personal opinion, to use it to anything like beneficial in my life. I think at this point, there are enough, pieces of content, whether that's books, whether that's videos, whatever, that I can learn and be inspired from. And now I can understand the historical context and how that these stories have been passed down, for so long. And there is some weight there, as far as the fact that people have held on to these and learned from these stories, and they still kind of hold up in parts of the Bible, still hold up in a life context, I suppose. But I don't use it. I don't look to it. It's again just too much baggage.
Yeah, I agree with you. I heard do you know who Jordan Peterson is?
Yep.
So Jordan Peterson uses and he changed my perspective on the love yourself like your neighbor. And he flipped that and said, we should take care of ourselves like we would someone that we are in charge of taking care of. So like if your mom was sick, how would you take care of your mom? That's how you need to treat yourself, because typical human, like what we do is we avoid that stuff but if it was our mom, we make sure she's taking her medicine. We'd make sure she's trying to eat right. Like we'd be putting pressure on her to do these right things, but then in return, not doing it ourselves, not taking our medicine, not doing what we need to do. So which I take and I try to carry that on, is make sure I'm focused on myself. Because if I'm not healthy, if I don't love myself, there's no possible way I could do anything for anybody else.
Yep.
I got to make sure I take care of myself. Now for me with the Bible, I was with him, and the stories are wild in them, right? Like they're wild. But when I changed the way I read it, I started to fall in love with it. One reason, how did so many people fall in love with it? Why is there so many people that are able to connect with this thing, right? Like why? And then I realized that most things are derived from that book, like movies, like everything is kind of based on that. So then I looked even deeper and I started listening to more podcasts, especially Jordan Peterson does some great things. If you ever listen to any of his explanations of some of the stories, it starts to make more sense. And I read it from a standpoint of an allegory, where it's more of an internal battle that they put into this book in an external view. So that's why it sounds kind of outlandish. For example, your journey reminds me of Moses, right? So Moses, freed all his people from the tyrant, and where did they go? To the desert. So it's like you freed yourself from this ideology, but you don't get to go right to the palace. You don't get to go right to this, gorgeous island and beach. You literally have to sit in nothingness. And which one's better? The nothingness or the tyrant that you had some type of structure that somebody was telling you what to do? Because in the desert, you have no structure, you have no direction, you have no idea which way the water is. You have no idea. So and then in that story, he says, they started to kind of fight everybody. So God, whatever that is, put poisonous snakes and had the snakes biting these people. And God told Moses, he said, put that snake on a stick and raise it above everybody so everybody can see it. And like, what are you talking about? And basically that story is supposed to be, well, everybody was afraid of the snake. I'm not going to take the snakes away. Snakes are always going to be there, but you have to face your fear. If that's what you're afraid of, if you don't face it, you're never going to be able to get away from it. So I don't believe that story happened. I don't believe that that's a true thing, that somebody was actually there witnessing this thing. I believe somebody with a creative mind like yourself was sitting there and was like, how can I tell my story in a way that people can visualize? So this is how he visualized it, kind of like a movie, right, in today's world, and painting that picture with a bigger thing. So when I read it, that's the way I try to go into it. Like, what's the internal, what is that meaning on the inside, not this external? Yeah. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, for sure. And that's like, what is the Bible? That Rob Bell, it's a lot like that. I mean, and he still talks about the Bible on his podcast. Like, he'll take stories and break them down, and that's essentially his outlook on it. It's like, here's the different genres that these books from the Bible are. They're not, most of them are not fact,
Correct.
Majority of them are allegories and poems and all these different things. And he goes into that. So I get that. And I think if you can look at it like that, and you're learning and getting something valuable from that,
by all means
do it. And that's I think another part of this journey is stepping back and being like, okay, well, where I'm at now, I'm not going to look at you and be like, dude, you're absolutely wrong.
Correct.
Stop doing what you're doing. Like, you're going to end up in a really bad place. I might tell someone, this doesn't sound like a healthy environment, or this doesn't sound like a healthy belief for you. The reason I would say that is because it's the way that you're living your life, the way it's affecting your decisions, the way you're treating other people, this belief that you're telling me about doesn't seem like a healthy thing, but I'm not going to tell you don't believe it. That's your choice. But just like that, if it's like bettering you, I have friends who, I mean, I live in the South. I have so many people that I know are mostly Christians.
Everybody that's
right?
in this building with me right now.
Yeah. So I have a great friend of mine who is devout Catholic, and we get into conversations all the time. But at the end of the day, he is not someone that I am like, yeah, he's a piece of shit. He's a good dude. And if there is anything that I ever disagree on, I'm just like, hey man, I actually don't believe that's right because of this. So you do you. And as long as it makes you, again, like we were saying, the best version of yourself, because when you're the best version of yourself, you're able to love the best that you can love. You're able to take care of your family and your friends the best that you can. And I think that's like one of the best things to do, like one of the main reasons to live life and to fulfill yourself with goodness and find things that do make you better.
Yeah, man. And I think the other thing that helps me is that story I just told you. I could be wrong. So like knowing that the things that are coming out of my mouth are not absolute truths. Like
Yes.
it could be wrong, but I will never know if I don't share it as an opinion.
Yeah.
Rather than like if I'm telling you, dude, this is what it is. Trent, if you don't believe this is what it is, dude. I can't be here. But one, yeah, you're sharing it, you're speaking, you're saying it, but you didn't state it in a curious way. So like you're not staying curious, you're being judgmental.
Yeah.
Which is not going to help you see where you're wrong. Which when you can't see where you're wrong, how the hell do you get better? Because that means you're always right.
Yeah, that's huge too. I say that all the time when I'm talking to people about, especially about faith. I'm like, I mean, I could be wrong. And some people even ask, well, what if you're wrong? I'm like,
I don't know.
I could be, I probably am wrong, you know?
What if you are?
Yeah. But ultimately the thing that I care about most within the conversation of faith is what the Bible talks about, which is your fruits. And if you're believing something that affects you negatively, then I don't think that is a good thing to believe. If you believe that you are no good, you are sinful, or if it affects the way that you make decisions for yourself or the decisions you make with the people that are in your life, and it's negative, I think it's not good. It's not healthy for you. Other than that, we are probably all off somewhere. None of us are right. None of us really know absolute truth. And when you hear somebody claim absolute truth, to me,
it's my walk away.
Yeah, it's a red flag.
Yeah. I'm not I listen.
Yeah.
But I'm also like, I don't think you're really open for a conversation. So I'm not even going to initiate it.
Yeah.
Because I think that's also a negative mindset that I had for a long time. And if you listen to the beginning of my podcast, that's growth from my podcast. In the beginning, I showed where my ideology lied. And I would kind of battle with that stuff.
Yeah.
Where I was definitely more judgmental than curious with a lot of them people. However, like I said, somehow doing that got me here. So yeah. I don't think I was wrong, right? Even though I was wrong, I was still right. Because if I didn't do those things, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah. And there's grace for that. Me too. There's grace for people. Like if someone's like, oh, this is the absolute truth, I'm not going to be like, you're a piece of shit and you don't know what you're talking about. I'm going to say, hey man, I disagree, but I get it. I get it because I once thought this is absolute truth. So, all of us at some point, and that's like even the idea of like cancel culture and shit like that, where it's like, there are some things where when people say them, especially public figures or leaders, they say things, they have to be held accountable for those things, but it doesn't mean that they're a complete piece of shit, because at some point we've said stuff that if people heard, or if enough people heard, they'd want to do the same thing to us. Like we all change, we all grow, we all adapt. Hopefully we all are changing and growing. And so I have to have grace for the individual who I can look at and see, yes, I have done this exact same thing. I've said those exact same words. Like we're just people trying to figure it out.
That's it, babe. And I do think that we're constantly put into those situations where people that we used to be show up. So like an older version of yourself, maybe they're younger or whatnot. Somehow they find their way into your life, and it's like, why are they here? Should I be sharing things? Because I'm not. I also am somebody that's always weary of like anybody that's trying to recreate themselves. So like you said, what you say earlier about um you said that he can't even see himself in those lyrics,
Yep.
The blind man. So I think you're right with he can't see himself, but the way I view people like that are he's trying to see himself in other people because he doesn't, if he could see more of himself, he would be more okay with who he actually is inside. If I can get more people to live the same lifestyle, where like for you, you're a creator. So you're creating these things, and it's like you really have to put yourself out there. You have no idea if anybody else has these same thoughts when you release that stuff. Same thing with the podcast. When I release this stuff, I have no idea how people are going to see this and if they think the same thing. But I'm not trying to recreate myself. I'm trying to help create myself and then share it with other people and let them kind of go in their own way. Where before I was always kind of either trying to mimic somebody completely 100% because that's what how people perceived that person.
Yep.
Or people that were not where I was on the hierarchy, I guess you could call it. I was kind of making little me's, mini me's. So I was right there in the middle where I think a lot of us usually are, recreating myself to make myself feel okay, but also trying to, be that guy.
Yeah.
So the blind man, in my opinion, is like, yeah, they're blind because all they want to see is themselves. They don't see you. They don't see you. And coming out of that's like very difficult.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And I think a lot of that goes back to what we believe about ourselves, like that's the stuff where we like, cause that's like a lot of insecurity and a lot of, like longing for who we are and what we want to be. But yeah, that's good.
so where you're at in your journey, man, like I was there as well with like, and I still think I'm kind of there with the not knowing what I believe in, right? Like, cause what is that? What does that look like? And I think I kind of found another path to kind of head down that doesn't have like a full ideology or a big church that you go to. Have you ever read Meditations by Marcus?
I've never read the book.
I don't know if you're into that stuff, dude. That's a recommendation of mine. That book, the best part about that book, and the last guest I had on was crazy. He was talking about it too. But this book was not, it's probably it's pretty rare because this guy, Marcus Aurelius was, I'm sure you know who he is, but the book was not written to be read by anybody else but himself. It was his diary. So when you're reading this thing, it's like he's talking about the things that he needs to do, not necessarily things anybody else needs to do.
Yep.
So I thought that like that's something that I kind of hold on to because it's very love based. It's very more about inner peace rather than this deity that nobody can define. If that really kind of makes any sense, you know what I mean? Like more than like heaven and hell are happening right now in your head.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
like you're either in hell or you're in heaven, and this is a guide to keep you out of that hell.
Yep. I would say my meditation practice this year has been very lacking. But the past 2 years, it's been pretty strong. My buddy, I first I did the Calm app, but I would do that every day and meditate every morning. I had a pretty good routine of meditating and writing every morning. And then a friend of mine introduced me to Sam Harris. And he has a meditation app now that was pretty great with other people on it with different talks and discussions. And he is pretty well known for not believing in God either. And so an interesting guy. And I've read he had a book that I read. I just forgot what it was called. But I believe in meditation. The power of meditation for your mind, for your body is incredible. Scientifically now we have a lot of studies proving how good it is for you. My practice this year has just been pretty weak, but I'll get back into it. That's it's something I continuously try to work on is my consistency. And I've been this year focused a lot on better sleep, better eating, and better exercising, where I've always, or I guess I would say the past 2 years have exercised, but I've never been consistent. Yeah. So there's a few things. Also, I mean, this is not a meditation app or whatever, but I'm a big fan of Andrew Huberman and the Huberman Labs podcast, where he talks a lot about science and health and all that stuff. And that's, I would say, helped me learn how to better take care of my body so that I can show up for my family and for my job.
Huberman has this outlook that you can't really find anywhere else.
Yeah.
Because he somehow is able to take he's like a normal guy, crazy smart when it comes to the inner workings of the brain, that I feel like anybody else that knows that much about the inner workings of the human body, you could not have just a normal conversation with, because you're just going to be like, what the hell is this? He is able to articulate these things that before we didn't really have anybody to explain them in that matter.
Yes.
So I'm with it. I love that. I think he was just on Joe Rogan talking about, I don't know what they talk about. I did not listen to it yet. But I've seen some clips that were posted. So I'm kind of, I think he, one of the subjects was like psychedelics and how that with science and whatever.
Yeah.
So I definitely am interested in listening to that. Sam Harris as well. I listen to Sam Harris. Ryan Holiday. Do you know who Ryan Holiday is? So he's where I really got introduced to Marcus Aurelius and Stoicism. It's the Stoic philosophy. That's how I found that. They all kind of gel together, which is crazy. Because sometimes I got to question all that. Like, why are all these guys all together? Why am I following them? They're all together. They're all doing the same podcast. They're all following each other around. What's the difference between this and a church? I don't know. Right? Like, is this true? So I even question that stuff all the time. But at the end of the day, I'm like you. I'm like, is my life better when I'm following these things? Or am I still in the same place and I'm just blindly following and pretending like my life is better?
Yep. And can someone question you? Can someone call you out and say, aren't you doing the same thing? Or is this even helpful? And you go, that's a good question. Let me think about that. Is it? Let me analyze. Let me look at it, because maybe I am wrong, instead of going, no, this is absolutely right because Andrew Huberman said to do this. I have to do this now. Mm-hmm. It's like there's a difference in what I've experienced of some of these things. If you're able to step back and analyze, self-analyze, and I think that's the best place. That's where you always want to be, self-aware. If you can remain there, I think your life will go, significantly better than if you can't do that.
I agree, brother. I agree. And I do have one prepared question that my son, when we were listening to your music on the way to drop him off at his after school program.
Yeah.
And my son wants to know how you became such a good singer with such a good voice, because that's what he wants to do. Now, before you even start, I told him my son he can actually sing, which is crazy because I can't. I wish I could. I told him it was the confidence thing in him, but I said, I'm going to ask him for you how he got that good. And you can take it from him.
Wow. Well, that's very kind of him. My voice has up until I would say the past year and a half, 2 years, has been, even though I've been singing for a lot longer than that, I've never liked it. And I've always doubted my voice. I've always thought it's not good enough. It sounds terrible. It took a long time to be like, you know what, dude, you've got this shit. People say, dude, it sounds awesome. So just trust them. You have people close enough who are honest enough to where if it sounds like shit, they're going to say, that sounded like shit. Let's do it again. So I'm going to trust him. Just practice, sing, keep singing. And at some point, if he really wants to sing, YouTube is great now because you can just do that. You don't have to put him in lessons, but get him in choirs or get him in a musical or get him in anything like that where he can just practice doing the thing. And at some point, he needs to just do it his way. Like there are things, just like if you're working out or playing a sport, stretching a muscle, there are things that are necessary to do to where you don't hurt yourself. There are ways to sing to where you don't absolutely shred your throat and your vocals. But other than that, like finding his own voice as he gets older and sings will be super important, not listening and trying to mimic someone else. For a while, we mimic, just like we were talking about earlier, like when we're growing and learning, we try to mimic and do it like this person. But eventually just trust yourself and find your own voice. But practice, just like anything else, is the only way that I'm able to sing now and it sound like it does is because I just did it a ton.
Awesome, brother. Isn't it kind of crazy when you really think about all these things that we're talking about? At the end of the day, the answer is very simple.
Yeah,
believe in yourself and do it.
Yes.
Like literally, like everybody's searching for these. Even myself, I'm reading these books. I'm listening to these podcasts. And at the end of the day, like it's like, that you just do it.
Yes.
Right. Like,
and
just
that's
do
it. And that's what we can give our kids more than I think what we got, which again, this is a generational thing. This is the day and age we live in is it's so different than our parents even lived when they were kids. All the things we have access to, so different. But for us, we're like, man, we want to encourage our kids to just try things and to fail at them, because the only way we talk about our kids were reading a book about Michael Jordan the other week. And it was like, he was at a press conference and they were like, Michael Jordan, you've made this many, like you've shot this many goals, you've scored this many goals. And he was like, I've missed, let me stop you and say, I've missed. It was like 3 times the amount of that. I've missed 3 times. Like I failed way more than I succeeded. And we always are saying with our kids, you got to try. It's okay if you fail. Like, let's celebrate that. Let's be excited, because we want them to grow up and not have to fucking work so hard to muster up the courage to try one thing. We want trying new things for our kids to be second nature. They try, and they just do it. And if they fail, so what? They learn something until they don't fail and they get it right. And I think that's something that I would encourage any person. Like you watch some of the YouTube videos, like one of the main things that I want to continue to put out into the world is to believe in yourself and to try to do something that you love to do. If you have a passion, if you have a dream, just fucking go after it. Try it, chase it, do this podcast. I mean, this is a great podcast.
Scariest thing in the world, dude.
But
putting that first video out.
You're putting yourself out there for people to judge you. But at the end of the day, the people who judge you the most are the people who aren't trying shit. They're not doing shit. And they're insecure about that. And that's fine. Like if they want to say shit, whatever, we'll take it and we'll throw it in the trash, because we know that the people who are trying stuff, who do care about us, who will be honest with us, those are the voices that we trust and we can listen to. But let's just, everyone out there, if you're listening right now, whatever you love to do, whatever you want to do, fucking try it. Just go for it. Yeah.
Just do it, man. Just do it. We all have that pain. We all know our pain's real. It's hard to see the pain in other people though.
Yeah. So, but it's there. Yeah.
It's there. Right. And just remember that when we're, in my opinion, I just remember that. And I try to avoid, I want the pain. I want to take it on. And because that's where I find answers. Just like you said, man, it's where you find that creativity. It's how you grow. So I'm with you, brother. I think you have great advice. You have a great story. I think you need to continue the little videos you do. If anybody's anybody listening, man, check out Trent's, not only his music, but he has these clips that he does that are pretty amazing. Continue with that. And I think you have some good things to share there.
Yeah,
I really
thank
do,
you,
brother. And I really appreciate you coming on. This was a great conversation. Do you have anything else that you'd like to say or, promote or anything like that?
Not really. I think just Trent Thompson. You can just search Trent Thompson on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, wherever you listen to music. You can find me there, and then go to YouTube, Trent Thompson, and that's what he's talking about the videos. I did a vlog every day in January, but talk about different topics. Christianity was one of them, leaving the faith. But in general, you can find my music on YouTube and those videos there. But dude, thank you so much for having me on. This was more fun than I anticipated because we got to talk about things that I don't get to talk about every single day. And you are a great host. So thank you for having me on the show.
I appreciate it, brother. I hope we both learned something today. I know I definitely did. Again, man, thanks for coming on. You're welcome to come on anytime, anything you want to share something or have something to share, man, feel free to reach out to me.
Killer. Well, reach out to me again at some point if you want me back and you're like, hey, I got a lull, I need someone, just holler at me and I'll see if I can make it work.
100%, brother. I'll definitely take that up. All right, man.
Sweet. Thanks so much,
brother. Yes, sir. Enjoy the rest of your day, dude.
Thanks. You too, man. Bye.
See ya.